Along with forks, pins, and skewers, discoveries are one of the main tactics that you're going to use in your chess games. And today we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of discoveries. We're going to talk about discovered check, discovered attack, and discovered threats, mainly discovered threats of checkmate. As you can see in this drawing by Paul Baumann, the knight has moved away, but it's the rook that's playing the check. And that's the key to a discovery. Discoveries move when you move one piece out of the way, and it opens the line for a different piece to put the king in check. Let's go ahead and have a look at the chessboard and see how powerful discoveries can be. In our first position, we have our rook on g1 with an X-ray attack towards the black king. An X-ray attack is when you're aiming towards something, but there are one or more pieces in between you and your target. A lot of times it's all about clearing those pieces out of the way to realize the power behind that attack. So here all we have to do is move that knight, and it's going to be a check against the king. Now notice if we move the knight backwards to here, it's check, and black has to do something about it. They have to move their king. But when we move this knight, as long as we don't move it where the king can capture it to one of these 2 squares, then it kind of gets a free move. So you can move your knight, open up the check from the rook, and the king has to get out of check instead of them being able to deal with your knight. So where do you think we should move this knight? If we're going to move it to aim towards something valuable, even if it looks like we're moving it onto a dangerous square, in this case, knight to e6. And the pawn cannot capture because the king is in check from the rook. He has to get out of that check, moves over to the side, and then our lucky knight gets to capture the queen. So let's stick with that idea, the discovered check. Here our queen has the X-ray attack along this long diagonal. Instead of capturing, pawn takes pawn and aiming towards another pawn, yay, a pawn. Instead, you can push and don't have to worry about its safety because black is in check. And then next move, of course, your pawn will take their rook. Here we see that when our bishop moves out of the way, it's going to open up a discovered check from the rook. So you could move your bishop, for example, to b5 and not worry about getting captured by their pawn. But even better, moving it to this dangerous looking square, a6, next move, you'll capture their bishop because they have to get out of check right now. They're in a discovered check. I mentioned earlier about being careful where you move that piece to get out of the way. Here you could safely move your knight to g4 and their knight couldn't capture you. They're in check. And then next move you could take their knight, for example. But be careful, because if you capture the f pawn or the d pawn to open up the check from the queen, the king can simply take you and get out of check at the same time. So here we're going to move it somewhere else. And wow, g6, that looks like a great move. The problem is, when you see a great move and you're aiming towards the rook, then you have to look for a better one. Maybe there's something even better. Notice if you go to g6, the pawns can't take you because he's in check. But instead, knight to c6, check. And after they block this check, probably with the bishop, then you get to take their queen. Now let's talk about discovered attack. This time, the rook's going to move out of the way, and it's going to open up not a check, but an attack to this queen. If you just move the rook anywhere, randomly, like rook a4, then the queen will run away. Maybe it'll move down here, for example. But if you move this rook and put your opponent in check, they don't have time for their queen to escape. And so even though you're giving away the rook, once they capture your rook, you take the queen. That's a pretty good deal for you. Here it's the bishop that has the X-ray attack along the long diagonal. It's going to be a discovered attack when you move the knight. So once again, let's move that knight with a big threat, or in this case a check. And they take your knight, but you get to take the rook. And once again, X-ray attack. And it's going to be a discovered attack once you move the bishop. So the bishop comes out for a check. They don't have any time to save the rook in the corner. You get to capture it next move. You do need to be careful about where you move that piece, because if you went to here, opening up the discovered attack on the queen, and put them in check, the black queen could simply capture you. So instead, knight g5 is the only one that works, giving away the knight so that you can take their queen. And here, black has played a pin against this knight, but this is what I call a boomerang pin. It comes right back at you. If this bishop's not protected, and it's not, then you simply have to find a way to move the knight with check. On the previous move, white cleverly sacrificed a bishop here, check, to get the king into position so that now white can play this check, opening up a discovered attack and winning that bishop back. All right, let's talk about discovered threats. And here, this rook would love to get up to the back rank for checkmate. The bishop's on the way, so you move the bishop to threaten the queen. And of course, if queen takes bishop, then it's checkmate. And so you're going to win their queen. They have to defend against a checkmate, and bishop gets to gobble the queen. Same idea here. Your queen wants to make it all the way to the back rank. Move your rook and have a big threat. Well, biggest threat is against a queen. So rook back to c1, giving its life so that you can get the checkmate at g8. And finally, we see another back rank checkmate possibility. So where should you move the knight? And you're probably not surprised to find that we're going to move it to attack black's queen. The knight jumps into d6, and next is either checkmate or knight takes queen. All right, in the next level video, we're going to be talking about a very powerful discovered check called double check. So make sure you tune in for that and for some more tips on how to use a discovered check. And I'll check you later.